In this video, we shall look at the 10 best traditional martial artists that failed in MMA. Mixed martial arts is a sport that requires you to learn a multitude of different disciplines. Long gone are the days where a single high-level grappling skill will get you a win over an experienced kickboxer. In the past 2 decades, the quality of mixed martial arts has gone through the roof, with the sport evolving extremely quickly. As a result, you will not see a single champion on the roster who is not an exceptionally well-rounded martial artist. This is not to say that you won't have a former kickboxing world champion or former college wrestler doing well, but if they stick only to this skill set and do not brush up on the weaknesses of their game, things will not go well for them in the cage. In this video, you will see that there are some very talented strikers and grapplers who failed to succeed in MMA despite being the best or near the best in the world at their own specific discipline. This should be a wake-up call for those who think that transitioning to MMA is easy if you already have a solid skill set. Mixed martial arts is not just about learning different martial arts, but also combining them and knowing the right moments to grapple, strike, and anything else that may be necessary. Wei Ray. At 64-3, the kickboxer named Demon Blade, Wei Ray is certainly not a man many people would want to fight. Born into a poor family, Wei Ray turned to combat sports at a young age and excelled in both traditional Chinese sanda as well as kickboxing. With an exemplary record, Ray has only ever been stopped once and lost decisions twice in kickboxing. As kickboxing does not pay very well in Asia, it made sense at the time for Ray to take a shot at MMA. As pretty much a pure striker, Wei Ray can blame the promoter for matching him against an unknown Iranian wrestler named Adib Narisharev, which resulted in him being taken down and tapped with relative ease. Had Ray been put against other strikers early on, he could have eased into his MMA career, rather than losing to an experienced wrestler. Next up is Alexei Ignashov. Ignashov is a Belarusian kickboxer with an 86-22 record. There is no doubt that Ignashov has supreme power in his arms and legs, having knocked out 41 of his opponents and won in MMA. Not too surprisingly, Ignashov looked like a fish out of water on the ground against opponent Shinsuke Nakamura, who finished him extremely easily. The submission used was an uncontrolled forearm choke, which could have been escaped by anyone who had a basic knowledge of how to regain guard whilst on the ground. Alexandre Dantas. Having beaten BJJ legends such as Marcelo Garcia, Damian Maia, and Fernando Terrere, it does not really get much better than this in sport jiu-jitsu. However, this just shows that BJJ on its own is simply not good enough to beat an experienced mixed martial artist. Sporting a 0-3 record in MMA, Dantas got TKO'd in all 3 fights, albeit against very tough opposition. Dantas is yet another case of a skilled martial artist in his own field being thrown in at the deep end of MMA against veterans. Needless to say, if you show up for your UFC debut, things aren't going to go well when you're matched against someone with over 40 professional fights. Best known for teaching the likes of Jake Shields and the Diaz brothers, Cesar Gracie is not the most famous of his family, but still relatively well known within the grappling community. Regardless of any competition experience, Gracie clearly knows how to train his fighters on the ground when it comes to an MMA setting. With that being said, Gracie was clearly out of his depth and past his best by the time he turned 40. It was at this age when he was paired up against the legendary Frank Shamrock, a man who is widely considered one of the best fighters of his generation. It didn't take Shamrock long to end the fight either, dropping Gracie with a right hook and finishing him within 20 seconds. Ricardo Mayorga. A 2-weight boxing world champion, at one point in his career, Mayorga had a 25-3 record, stopping 24 of these men without having to go to a decision. His MMA record is nowhere near this impressive, with 0 wins and 3 losses. Rather unsurprisingly, it was the grappling martial arts that led to the downfall of Mayorga. He never got to showcase any of his knockout power and was instead submitted in 2 out of his 3 fights. This highlights the importance of a talented striker learning defensive wrestling to stay on their feet at the very least. Minoru Kimura is a very talented striker. Of his 36 wins, 28 of those have come by TKO, which won't surprise you as he is the protege of MMA knockout legend Wanderlei Silva. Kimura found himself in the unenvious position of being in the middle of a crossfire between Silva and Charles Crazy Horse Bennett. This feud between the 2 fighters led to Kimura having his MMA debut against the 60-fight veteran, who was well past his best at this point. The actual fight was one of the quickest ever finishes, with Kimura trying a flying knee at the start of the match, only for Crazy Horse to punch him in the face in mid-air and win the fight by TKO. Gokhan Saki. After having an extremely solid kickboxing career with 81 wins and 16 losses, the move to MMA looked like a natural progression for Saki, especially when considering that he was able to TKO Anderson Silva within this rule set. However, as you may have already guessed, the MMA career of Saki did not go to plan. Despite there being considerable hype around his UFC signing, Saki went 1-1 in the promotion and 0-1 in another. Not only was it his poor MMA record, but also the fashion in which Saki lost that surprised fans. He was not taken down by wrestlers and submitted, but instead was dropped by punches from a kickboxing style. 3 fights were enough to show that Saki was not cut out for MMA despite being a great kickboxer. Next, former IBF, WBU and IBO title holder James Toney had a very short stay in the world of MMA. For some reason, Toney decided he would like to try MMA for the first time, aged 44, and even more bizarrely, decided that this would be against the 30-fight veteran and former heavyweight champion Randy Couture. As you would expect, things did not go well for Toney, who was quickly taken down to the floor and submitted via head and arm choke. Even if Toney had trained MMA for several years, it's extremely unlikely he could have ever reached the skill of Couture, so to jump in against him as a debut fight was pure insanity. Last up is Marcelo Garcia. There is no doubt about it. Marcelo Garcia is one of the greatest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners of all time, having won ADCC 4 times, as well as Worlds 5 times. Not only this, Garcia has a reputation of being able to beat fighters who are a lot bigger and stronger than him by getting underneath them with X-guard and choking them from the back. Surprisingly, however, these skills did not translate well to MMA. In his only MMA fight against Kim Dae-won, who has an 11-7 record, Garcia was able to take him down very easily and get to his back. Instead of the finish everyone was expecting, Garcia was unable to secure a rear naked choke and could not finish the fight. In the second round, Kim came out swinging and hurt Garcia badly. Unfortunately, one of his blows caused a cut so bad that Garcia was unable to continue. This is a stark reminder that BJJ is not a be-all and end-all skill in MMA. Garcia is one of the best grapplers on the planet and was unable to finish a mid-level fighter despite his vastly superior ground skills.